What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of areas of interest that we need to talk to you about. We have this area of interest out here in the main development region. We had another area that was briefly tagged by the National Hurricane Center today. We have this tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa, and already a very large and very robust tropical wave, and we're seeing some signs of convection starting to develop just offshore that could help this thing use its resources, like use its convection to kind of start to organize and develop, so we'll have to pay attention to that. And we're also paying attention to the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea, as well as we're now seeing more ensembles of a potential Texas system making landfall over there. And we know there's a lot of thunderstorm activity. There's a lot of convection going on in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to have to pay attention to that as well. We're going to have to see if this thing will be a tropical system or not. I do not think it will be, but hey, this season has been a whole list of surprises, so you never know, so we'll have to pay attention to that down the road. But here are the cliff notes for what we have from the NHC. We briefly had this area get tagged right there. A small area of low pressure located a few hundred miles southeast of Bermuda is producing limited shower and thunderstorm activity. Dry air and strong upper-level winds are expected to prevent development of the system, while the low moves generally north-northeastward. During the next day or so, it's not going to develop. It's a near 0% chance, and they're going to drop it at 8 p.m. tonight. But here's what we have going on right here with Disturbance 2. This is what we're looking at right here, and we finally have that yellow X that I was talking to you guys about. So here we go. An area of disorganized showers over the central tropical Atlantic is associated with the tropical wave. Some slow development of the system is possible this weekend into early next week, while it moves westward to west-northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Formation chance in the next 7 days is 20%. Once again, it hasn't really gone up very much. I was talking to some guys about it. We were thinking it was going to be a gradual increase because, first of all, this system needs to cross. It doesn't need to cross. It needs to crawl before it can walk, and then it needs to walk before it can run. So we finally have an area of interest. We finally have the yellow X tagged, and we can go ahead and kind of zoom in on this right here in the central Atlantic. So this is what we have going on here. We're noticing some relatively broad rotation, although that is it's very small and a very tight area of rotation as well. So that's already a pretty interesting start, to say the very least. And we're just going to have to see how the convection kind of reacts and fires up to it in the meantime. But yeah, there's our tropical wave right there. You're seeing a lot of signs of development right there already, or some early good signs of development. You have some very fast rotation. You have some very tight rotation as well. You just need some more convection to get in there and start getting its act together, and then the system will be on its way, as it's going to be entering some very good conditions all the way until it gets up into the Lesser Antilles, although some models have been tracking this further and further to the west into the Caribbean Sea, so we're going to have to pay attention to that, as a lot of the operational and ensemble runs are now calling for this to enter the Caribbean Sea and maybe move through there before impacting other areas. So that's some more things you're going to have to keep very close tabs on at this current point. But regardless of this does pose a threat to land at some point in the next week or so, and that's why we are covering this, and that's why I'm talking about this. Not only is it just because the NHC is tagging this, but because we're watching it and we're watching the conditions, and we're going, oh no, hey, we got to pay attention. We got to watch out for this, guys. We got to take this very, very seriously. So that's the main thing we're paying attention to at this current time. We're also watching stuff that's going on in the western Atlantic as well. It's mainly mesoscale convection. However, I have been looking at more ensembles, and they've been advocating for tropical development in the western Gulf of Mexico, and we will show you those in just a little bit. But we're also paying attention to a lot of these convective bursts right here, and especially in the Caribbean Sea. Over here, that's something we're paying attention to as well. Not mainly because it's going to do anything or anything like that, but what it's kind of adding up to, though, that's what we're paying attention to, because here's what I am noticing right here. We're seeing a lot more convection fire up, a lot more convection burst up all over the western tropical Atlantic, whether you're in Cuba, off the coast of Haiti, in the Bahamas, Florida, the western Gulf. What this is ultimately going to do is it's going to continue to moisten up the atmosphere. All the dry air is getting completely mixed out across this western Atlantic, and that's going to allow for more moisture and more better conditions for tropical development to really take advantage of it. So that's the main stuff we're paying attention to over in the western Atlantic Ocean, but we are looking at mesoscale convection, and we are watching an area of possible development near Texas. Now let's go ahead and go to the eastern Atlantic. That's this tropical wave that we're paying attention to. You're already starting to see signs that the convection is dying off. This is typically the splashdown effect that we've been talking about. Splashdown is effectively when the system enters the Atlantic Ocean and it starts losing its convection. However, you still see a burst of convection to the southwest of it, and my guess is, considering the close proximity of that, it's going to take advantage of this convection in the intertropical convergence zone and use that as a source for convection and begin its process to organize and develop. But this is a large and robust wave that we are paying attention to. We're also watching another tropical wave over Central Africa as well that might be coming after this one. So we're going to have to keep very, very close tabs on that. And this tropical wave is actually a lot larger and a lot more robust than the tropical wave that's trying to organize and develop in the central tropical Atlantic. So that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And depending on what happens over the next little while, will really kind of be setting the tone for what's going to be happening in September. So that's what we have with the satellite imagery. At least in that terms, we're going to go ahead and go to the entire Atlantic-wide view and show you the moisture component to this. Let's go ahead and show you the water vapor imagery. Main development region is primed for development. Western Atlantic is primed for development. There are some spots of dry air across the eastern Caribbean and western main development region, but that's not going to really do too much anymore. We're now at the stage where pretty much everything's at play. And we were talking about it yesterday. We were watching several systems, several low-pressure systems that continue to organize and develop, and we're going to have to pay attention to all of that. Let's go ahead and show you the true color imagery as well, just to kind of give you another glance of what we're looking at in the Atlantic. We're not seeing any Sahara dust anymore, and the Sahara dust we are seeing is very minimal at this current point. And now we're at the stage where it's going to kind of be what this happens the next month is going to kind of decide what's going to happen with this hurricane season. Is it going to explode, or is it going to be a big bust? That's kind of what the next month or so is going to kind of play out. My guess for the next month is we're going to see a relatively active pattern. The first 2 weeks of September are going to be quite active, as you're seeing possible development in the Gulf of Mexico, several systems organizing and possibly developing in this main development region, systems entering the Caribbean Sea, rapidly intensifying with the conditions that they are given. And ultimately, that's what we're kind of looking at. The next 2 weeks of September are going to be a little more interesting. And matter of fact, we do have a new graph for you from the Climate Prediction Center, once again showing signs of development in the main development region. And in the next week or so, they're calling for some sort of development in the Caribbean Sea or Gulf of Mexico, which is kind of what I was kind of referring to. And you're also looking at this current point, some more tropical development in the MDR. So ultimately, a very active pattern is going to be present, and we're going to have to pay attention to it. One other thing we're going to go ahead and show you before we move to the conditions is the ocean analysis. Right over here, region 3 and 4 is starting to plummet and collapse again. We're down below the negative 0.5 threshold for a La Niña, and considering what regions 1 and 2 are at, they're at negative 0.638. We are at this current point unofficially in La Niña conditions for the second time this season. Is this going to last long, or is this going to rebound back to around negative 0.4 or so? We're going to have to watch, and we're going to have to pay attention to it. But regardless, we're seeing another collapse in regions 3 and 4. Regions 1 and 2 have been holding steady, so ultimately that's not going to make too much of a difference. But kind of what happens over the next 48 hours will determine whether A, we are in a La Niña at this current point, or B, this is going to be one of those oscillating trends, and we're back to negative neutral. But looking at all the regions right here, region 4 has definitely been plummeting a little bit. It's kind of dropped by about by about 0.12 degrees Celsius on average, but region 3 is really what's been taking the cake. It's down to negative 8.75. This is probably the lowest of any of the regions right here. I mean, other than probably region 1, I guess, but region 3 has really been plummeting down to its lowest levels it has been since 2022, and that was our last La Niña year, and, well, it's coming back, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you love it or hate it, La Niña is coming back, and that's not just going to play some role in a role in the tropics, but it's also going to play a role, at least for those living in the United States, with winter weather activity, and we will get to that when the appropriate time comes. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and show you some tropical conditions that we're watching right here. Let's go ahead and start with the sea surface temperatures, at least with the latest maps we can pull up for you right here based off the North Atlantic, as well as other times that we're watching over here. I guess we're not seeing those updated maps, unfortunately, but hey, it is what it is. We still have a relatively good map right here from August 24th. This was 4 days ago, but ultimately, based on the climate reanalyzer stats I was looking at earlier, we're kind of in a similar situation where we were at that current point, so that's why I'm still comfortable showing you these maps right here. Global sea surface temperatures, we're still seeing a lot of those areas. Once again, main development region in particular is my main concern. You're seeing a lot of 28, 29, 30 degrees Celsius waters over here, and that's what's going to drive this tropical activity. At least it's going to help drive the convection to get there and allow for organization and development. We kind of rehashed this a lot over the last little while, so I won't talk too much about it, but I'm going to talk about the Western Atlantic because we are seeing a lot of this convection and a lot of more signs that stuff is going to be going on over there as we continue to see it more operational and ensemble runs saying, hey, something might be going on. You're going to want to pay attention to that, and that's what we're going to be ultimately doing. And that's what we're looking at. Gulf Mexico, once again, over 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. 31 degrees Celsius for the western half of the Gulf of Mexico or 88 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're seeing that similar activity over there in the Gulf of, not in the Gulf, but in the Caribbean Sea and in the southwestern Caribbean Sea as well. Ultimately, you're seeing a broad area of good, very warm and very moist air and a lot of water and a lot of very deep warm water as well, as we go ahead and show you the ocean heat content. Ocean heat content continues to be a very big problem for the Caribbean Sea, for the Western Main Development Region, for the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the area around the Bahamas. And that's something we're paying attention to as well. Not going to really go over everything, but ultimately what we're watching with the area of interest, which is our main concern in the Atlantic right now, where it's at right now, it's in an area of about 25 to 50 OHC. And that's pretty decent for conducive strengthening, pretty decent for a good starter pack for organization and development. But as it pushes further to the west and moves into better and better conditions, then what you're going to see is maybe 75 OHC, then up to 100, then 125, then maybe 150 in a couple of isolated spots as it approaches the Lesser Antilles. And if it enters the Caribbean Sea, you're going to see a lot of 175 OHC as you're starting to see that off the coast of Hispaniola over here, off the coast of Jamaica and Cuba, and on some isolated spots in the Gulf of Mexico, such as the Loop Current and this eddy over here off the coast of Texas. So that's the last thing we want to see, and these conditions really are concerning to watch. So let's go ahead and show you the wind shear map as of late right here. Wind shear continues to be very good in the main development region and in the vast majority of the Caribbean Sea. There are some wind shear indicators in the Gulf of Mexico, but a lot of this can be attributed to this mesoscale stuff going on over here off the coast of Texas. So that's what it's kind of chalked up to, because otherwise you're seeing relatively low wind shear in the western Gulf of Mexico and some parts of the eastern Gulf as well. We're going to see over the next few days a pattern change of where we ultimately see a lot less wind shear, and once that happens, the Gulf will be pretty much open for business. The MDR is already open for business, and the Caribbean Sea is already open for business, and even parts of the Atlantic Basin too are also open for business. So that's some concerning stuff we're going to have to pay attention to. where the system is, where the low pressure system is at right now, it's in an area of about 10 knots of wind shear, which that's pretty good if you want to see some tropical development. And that's kind of part of the reason you're already seeing a lot of rapid rotation going on. It's a very tight rotation with the tropical wave right there. All it needs is some convection to help get the ball rolling. And for what I'm looking at personally, it looks like, to me, it's going to be one of those scenarios where it's going to wait till nighttime for the tropical wave to really start organizing and developing some convection, mainly because the sun's not going to be in the way, and diurnal max starts to pick up around 10 p.m. Central Time and ramp up all the way until sunrise. So that's the thing we're paying attention to. And we're also watching the ensemble runs, which we can finally get to right here. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper analysis to all these waves that we're noticing right here. Here's the European 0Z run right here. Let's go ahead and go to the 12Z run from yesterday. Just to give you some more context, the 12Z run from yesterday, let's go ahead and zoom in on this real quickly just to kind of give you a better look at it if this thing will actually end up loading. But regardless of that, yep, there we go. Here's what we were looking at yesterday for the 12Z run across both of the waves in the main development region. What we're noticing, at least with the western wave, which is the one the IHC has tagged, of generally a push to the west, generally moves north of the Greater Antilles. While there is a lot of ensemble runs with it, some of them do have quality over quantity, and you're noticing a lot of tropical ensembles really get this system pretty strong. You're seeing a 952 millibar system with one of the ensemble runs right there. And similar situation with the eastern wave over here. You're seeing a lot of scenarios of generally some more weaker tropical storm-esque waves over here. And that's something you're paying attention to. Let's go ahead and show you the 0Z and show you how this changes, though. What you're noticing with the 0Z, and let's go ahead and zoom out on this and pivot this more or less to encompass the entire tropical Atlantic over here. What you're noticing with the 0Z, a lot more of the ensembles shift this into the Caribbean Sea and heading towards the Gulf of Mexico. That is a very concerning look, and to me, what that tells me is this system may not develop right away, and that's going to be a worst-case scenario because typically with stronger systems, they tend to push further to the north due to the Coriolis force. What you're seeing instead is a weaker system move through the Caribbean Sea, move through 175 plus OHC, moving through all that warm water, moving through all that low wind shear, and really starting to ramp up from there. That's what we're watching at this current point, and that's a pretty big red flag, if you ask me, based on the European. Same situation with what we're seeing with the Eastern wave. A lot more stronger scenarios and a lot more of them as well, and that's something to continue to take a look at. Let's go ahead and zoom out and then zoom into the western Gulf of Mexico. What you're noticing over here, you're seeing a lot more scenarios of tropical systems organizing and developing. I want to see, just out of curiosity, when this is ultimately going to start happening. Okay, the scenarios start picking up in the next 3 days or so, and then they really start to get active in the next 5 days or so, and by the time we get to 10 days out, we're seeing a lot of these scenarios really starting to play out and organize. So that's what we're going to have to continue to watch with the European ensembles. I'm trying to go ahead and go back here to the European European ensembles right here. So let's go ahead and go back out to 240 hours out just to kind of give you one last scope of this. But ultimately, the key takeaways with this run is you're seeing a lot more of a push to the west, a lot more enter the Caribbean Sea, and that is a worst case scenario because of the orientation and because of how much better the conditions are over there. GFS ensembles at this current point, here's the 0Z, showing not as much going on in the Caribbean and with the tropical wave in general, but they are seeing a lot with the eastern wave as well as in the Gulf of Mexico. So those are two factors, again, that we're going to also have to pay attention to. Looking at the 12Z run for you, okay, I guess we can't look at the 12Z run. Wow, I guess it crashed right at the perfect time. So whoops, that's not very good. But anyway, I think I got my point across right pretty nicely when I say this right here. This tropics are looking like they're about to wake up. Nothing is set in stone. Keep that in mind, but ultimately we're seeing a lot more of a situation where we're starting to see the European ensembles blow up, the GFS ensembles blow up, and we're starting to see more of these operational runs start to catch up with it. You're not seeing really not that much development yet on the operational runs, but what you are starting to see, though, is you're starting to see better and better scenarios and better conditions for tropical development. And that's where I'll leave it with right there. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. We are very close to 10,000 subscribers. If we could do it by the end of the week, that would be very much appreciative to kind of end August on a very high note. That would be very happy. That would make me very happy. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to be an official sponsor, be sure to join the Patreon. Link is in the description down below. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.